I do want to talk about one particular piece of news that really left a mark on the world.
I know what you're going to get to.
Yeah, okay.
I was about to mention it, and one of the things, one of the places they sent me was to Dallas when the President of the United States was shot. And I had the task of reporting back to our audience in New York what I saw and what I felt. And I know what your question is.
Please tell me what you saw and what you felt when it happened.
Well, I was not on duty that day. I had a day off.
And this is November 22nd?
Yes, November 22nd. It was a Thursday. And I think I had Thursday and Friday off. I work weekends, so well, anyway. My plan that day was to go see my dentist about 11 o'clock. Painless Pete Koutros, we called him. And I did that. And then I was going to go down to the village and maybe buy some Christmas cards and wander around, have lunch with some friends, maybe go to a show. Then that would be my day off. And in any event, I had the dental work done. And I got on the subway, and I got off at West 4th Street in Greenwich Village. And as soon as I came to the top of the steps, I heard a woman screaming, and she came running up to me. And she was crying. And the hair on her head was then washed over the front of her face from her tears. She was hysterical. She was screaming, "The president's been shot! The president's been shot!" And I, of course, having a cynical streak, as a native,
as all journalists do, right?
Well, I was trying to develop that as a fledgling journalist. I was trying to become as cynical as possible, and believe me, I've attained that goal. But I'd said to myself, tonight, lady, when these tourists come into town, you can tell them that I think that is crazy. She's another weirdo. But then I noticed something happening around me. People in New York were stopping and talking to each other. There was an electricity in the air. You know, the traffic on 6th Avenue was tied up, and people were slowing down, and they were listening to radios, and I said, it can't be, because we had warnings that something might happen to him, to Kennedy, you know, because of his stance on civil rights, and that he had some threats.
And the Cuban Missile Crisis.
And he had some threats from segregationists who had earlier, I think, disrupted a couple of rallies, with their demonstrations against the black movement. And so in any event, everybody was warning Kennedy not to go. And I said to myself, God, they couldn't have done this. I ran over to a telephone booth and I put a nickel in. It was a nickel in those days. And I called my office, and I didn't have to ask the question. As soon as the editor on the other end, I could hear the teletypes going. I heard people yelling. And I said, and there's such an energy, terrible, dreadful energy. And I said, what's this about Kennedy? He said, get your up here immediately. I said, oh, God. I hung up, got in a cab, and I told him to take me uptown immediately. And there's another aspect to this. I won't tell you what the cab driver said. I'll save that, but because we're running a little long. But
oh, no.
All right. Talk about the cynicism of New York City cab drivers. He didn't have his radio on, and I could see people, again, all the way uptown, stopping and talking to each other. And I said, please turn the radio on. He said, what's wrong? I said, haven't you heard? The president's been shot. And his only reaction was, you mean I got to worry about that guy Lyndon Johnson now? You know. And I said to myself, how callous? How callous can you be?
And even today, the level of callousness that goes on.
He was only thinking of himself. The president's dead. Mexican borders are closed. We don't know if we're going to get attacked by the Russians. And he's thinking about Lyndon Johnson. God. Anyway.
Amidst all the chaos and
there was chaos
and shock, you go to the office, and is that when you get assigned to go to Dallas too?
Yes, but they handed me a tape recorder and about $500, and they said, get to Dallas any way you can. So there's the challenge, you know. Getting the news is one thing. Getting to the news is another thing. How do you get to Dallas in the middle of a national crisis when New York City is tied up like a knot, people pouring out of their offices, the bridges are closed, people are stuffed in elevators, they're near panic. It was, talk about gridlock. I mean, New York City was in chaos. And I hailed a cab I was given a Sennheiser tape recorder. That's it, and some wire. You know, we used telephone clips in those days, where alligator clips, where you could clip onto the innards of a telephone and send your reports up.
Sure.
Anyway, I had a kit, and I jumped into a cab and I started handing this guy $20 bills, and I said, "Get me to Idlewild," it was called.
Right.
But what's the first thing, as a journalist? What's the first thing you got to think of to get to the news? Who's flying to Dallas? Duh. Well, let's see, Delta Airlines, because they're based out of in those days they were based out of Dallas. So now this guy, this cab driver was great because he broke a few laws. We traveled on some sidewalks. We went through every backyard imaginable in Queens, taking these crazy routes to Idlewild Airport. That later was named Kennedy, but that was Idlewild Airport. And the first thing I did was I went to the Delta. I got there eventually, but we knocked over laundry lines. We chased a few dogs off the thing, and I kept and getting across the bridge was amazing. How he cut people off, and he was making money every second this happened. And we get to Idlewild, and I went to the Delta ticket office, and I ran in, and I gave him some more money to stay, and I said, "Don't leave me here, because I'm dead if you do." And I said to the Delta guy at the desk, "Are you flying to Dallas?" He said, "Every plane in this airport is not leaving. This airport is shut down, and all the planes are grounded in the United States." They did. They ground every airport. Every airport was
just
shut.
like they did with September 11th.
He said, "But we did hear that there is a special flight that the Secret Service has going on American. So you better get over there." So we ran right over, and we just made that flight because they were loading special agents, and they were loading press, and whoever else had a need to get to Dallas, government people and whatever, on that plane. And we took off, and now we're on our way. I'm breathing a little easier because I'm on the flight and I'm getting to the scene, and. All the way down, it was probably one of the most dramatic flights I've ever taken, because the pilot, as we passed over major cities like Pittsburgh, heading south, and Memphis or whatever, he would tap into the local radio stations. You could pick them right out of the sky, and he piped everything into the cabin, all of these reports. And we were having like a flying press conference. We followed the development of the story until we hit the ground. A suspect named Lee Harvey Oswald is believed to be the gunman, the lone gunman. Lee Harvey, how do you spell that?
So you heard this on the plane coming over there, somewhere 40,000 feet over
all the way down
Memphis or something
and that he was arrested in the Texas Theater, that he's been taken to the police headquarters. So now we knew where to go. And so, because when we took off from New York, we didn't know about Lee Harvey Oswald.
Now, who else was on the plane? You said Secret Service people were on the plane, but were any members of the press, any other press members?
Oh, yeah. Bob Considine was aboard.
Okay.
And I think Breslin, Jimmy Breslin, I'm not sure. But yeah, they were, whoever could make that flight and had a press pass got on. And the last thing I saw was the public relations guy for American Airlines running up the steps with a few sandwiches and a couple of bottles of gin. So you know that the reporters were going to be okay. So we landed at sometime around 8 o'clock in Dallas in the evening, but we got there. And we went over to the police headquarters, which was in City Hall, and we went right up to the third floor where we were holding Oswald. And the chaos began because officials were pouring in from all over the country and then later all over the world, or the New York bureaus of the foreign press organizations. They were bolting out of New York to get to Dallas. And so from that, we experienced a lot of the chaos that brought great criticism to the press, because there was a charge after when everything settled that we had run amok, that we were influencing the coverage, the protection of Oswald and so forth. That's another issue.
So the press was getting flack even at that time during this national crisis for causing more.
Actually, no, because the police were pretty But police were dazzled by all of the people, first of all, that hit that town, and all the questions that they had to answer. And they were trying to cooperate, but I think they kind of liked the attention, to tell you the truth. Mm-hmm. There was this underlay of, wow, we're little old Dallas.
The same thing with hearing your voice up for the first time on a tape recorder,
right,
seeing your
byline
in
something
paper.
Well, I guess, yeah.
How did you, now what I want to show is, this is the famous photo of Lee Harvey Oswald, just inches from Jack Ruby, within milliseconds of him getting shot. Of course, we have Oswald here, Jack Ruby reaching over, and if you look very carefully further to the right of the frame is our guest of honor here, Ike Pappas, who is right there, right next to Jack Ruby, with his hand, with a microphone in his hand, at probably the perfect place to uncover, to be at such an event. Do tell us about this shot. Please tell us about how
I'll tell you about that shot, but there's a little lead up.
Yes, please.
Because this man is a very important person in this entire story. Mm-hmm. That is Jack Ruby, who came off my left side here. He was hiding behind me. I'll get to that in a minute.
Sure.
But he did come around me to shoot him. And in any event, let me just, I filed some stories that night. That was Friday night. But we were putting pressure on the police chief, Jesse Curry, to bring Oswald down. We wanted to see Oswald. You know, and somebody suggested that the police were beating him up to Curry because he had killed the president. And Curry was astounded. He said, "No, we didn't. We're not beating him up." But he did get injured. Oswald did get injured. His eye was hurt.
He got worked
when
over.
He was captured. Mm-hmm. Somebody took a shot of it, punched him in the eye to subdue him, and he was seen with this big mouse on his face. But in any event, Curry caved, I should say, in and made an agreement with us to bring him down at midnight to the lineup room on the provision there would be no questions. Absolutely no questions, guaranteed. Midnight comes, they bring him down. Of course, as soon as he hit the door, questions. First question, one guy asked a question here, and everybody asked questions. And then that was at the time when the question came from the crowd. I think we all almost asked it simultaneously, did you kill the president? And he said, no, that's what the reporters told me that. He said, I didn't kill anybody. I'm a patsy, and I want to see the ACLU. And then Curry said, that's it, get him out of here. So they took him away. At least we got a shot of him, a picture, I should say. Shot is not a right word to use at this time. But we got a picture of him, and we got few words out of the most famous assassin that I think the United States has ever had, or criminal. Here's the president's killer, in front of you, as a reporter. That's an amazing thing. Anyway, the dust is now settling after they took Oswald away, and I see Henry Wade, the district attorney of Dallas County, surrounded by some reporters, and he's having a little press conference. And his press conference has to do with what's going to happen next on the legal front. Mm-hmm. And up comes a guy to me wearing a black suit with a gray fedora, and to me he looked like a vice cop. He looked like a detective, and I needed a telephone. We had no cell phones then. You couldn't just, dial up the internet,
right?
And or iPod yourself to freedom, in the news world. You had to find a telephone. So if he was a detective, he had a phone. So I had to humor him, and he came up and he said, "Are you a reporter?" And I said, "Yes." "Are you a policeman?" "Huh?" He said, "No, I'm Jack Ruby. I run the Carousel Club down the block." He said, and then he pulls his card out, and he gives me his card. And it says Jack Ruby's Carousel Club, drinks, food, dancing, And he said, why don't you get some of your, where are you from, New York? Yeah, all right. Well, why don't you get some of your guys and come down to the club? You can have a great time. We got booze, we got whatever you need, And I am stunned by this because actually I took his card for one reason, only because I needed a telephone. But I said, look, I'm putting it right in here. Now can I get a telephone? And Ruby was always used this club to gain favor in town with the police department, because he would bring over and give him free drinks and all that. In any event, I was stunned because again, we didn't know whether this was a prelude to an attack on our country, because we didn't know why they wanted the president dead, who wanted the president dead, and the Mexican borders were sealed, and we were on high alert. You know, the SAC bombers were in the air.
Sure, sure.
And here is this guy, pardon the expression, pimping the press right after, in the middle of the city hall. And I said, anyway, he said, you need a telephone? Just a minute. Jack Ruby goes over to Henry Wade, the district attorney at Dallas County, and tugs on his sleeve, and he said, Henry, there's a guy over there, he wants to interview you. Can he use your office? And he said, yeah, take him in there, and he wants to use the phone. Okay, let him use the phone. So now here, astoundingly, is Jack Ruby, the man who eventually assassinated the assassin of the President of the United States, escorting me into Henry Wade's office to use the telephone. And in walks Wade. I'm dialed to New York by this time, and I'm giving everybody a running account of the press conference with Oswald. Ruby disappears. I don't know what happens to him. I interview Henry Wade, and I get a major beat all over the place, with high kudos from everybody in New York, because I was going straight to New York.
Right.
And I looked around, and things had settled. I had done my work, and I filed, okay, but I needed to file for the morning. So I went to a local radio station, and I had called the owner of the place, and I said, I need to use your newsroom, you know, to keep up with the teletypes, but I have to file for can I use your phones? He said, yeah, come on over. So no problem. So I was writing and trying to work up my morning pieces when the bell rings at 3 o'clock in the morning. And the engineer comes down. He was the only guy working. They were playing dirge music over and over. And he opens the door, and in comes Jack Ruby with a big bag of groceries in the middle of the night. And I look at him and I said, there's that weird guy again. What's he doing here? You know, he's everywhere. And it turned out, well, he said, hey, hi, I saw the lights on, and I thought you'd like to have some sandwiches. And I said, God, I hope this guy disappears soon, because he's giving me.
So you didn't like him from the.
He's giving me the creeps. Of course, I didn't like him. I mean, he was, you know, I didn't. I mean, he was really weird.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't take much for a New Yorker to get feelings like this about people like that, because anyway, I didn't have any of his sandwiches because I didn't trust him.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I had a Coke because I could open it. But he left, and the next time I saw him was the morning that this picture was shot, and the morning that he shot Oswald.
And he wasn't in the spotlight so much. He just came out of nowhere. From when.
Yeah, actually, that morning, that was Sunday morning. The last time I had seen him was Friday night. Saturday, I worked on other aspects of the story.
What was your feeling when this happened right in front of your very eyes?
Well,
I mean, what was your initial reaction?
Well, you don't think in sentences. You think in nanoseconds. And what I said was, see, Ruby had come from off my left shoulder,
right?
And all I heard were footsteps. And I went forward. As Oswald came up to my position, I had to talk him up to that point. I was saying, here's the prisoner. He's changed into a black sweater from his T-shirt. He's being, as he was moved. They were moving him to the county jail.
Right.
And I heard footsteps, and then I saw this flash in front of me of a black image, a black suit. And then a bang, and the impact of the weapon. I was so close that I felt the weapon, the explosion of the gases from the muzzle impacting on my body. And in nanoseconds, I said, and these were just feelings. They weren't even thoughts. You must say something now. Don't freeze. This is his history. What's happened here? He's been shot. Well, say it. You know, Oswald has been shot. A shot rang out. Now he's moaning and he falls, and there was a fight. I didn't know it was who shot him. I didn't see a face. I just saw a flash on Oswald's black sweater, and the impact of this weapon. I thought that I had been hit because sometimes you read that you can take a shot in your side and you don't even know that you're wounded. And I kind of looked down after I said that he's been shot. And everything, all of the detectives pulled their guns out of their holsters, and they were telling everybody to freeze. And I saw a Texas Ranger point a gun at me, and he said, "Freeze." Now I'm trying to broadcast, and I'm down on one knee, and I'm talking like this. I'm trying to freeze as much as I possibly can, but I have to keep talking because I felt that there was going to be a crossfire. And in fact, there was a backfire of a car shortly after this, if you listen to the tape. And that could have set off a crossfire of shooting and hurting everybody in between. But what happened was that Oswald collapsed onto the two detectives, the two detectives, and I saw them dragging him back in while a fight was going on in front of me, while they were subduing Ruby, grabbing his gun, and so forth, which could have gone off hitting anybody. But the thought I had was, just report the story. He's been shot, say it that way. Stay calm and do it. But the worst thing you can do is freeze, because it's a heck of a shock.
Yeah. You were 30 years old at the time.
Yeah.
And that was...
I left the building that day 75.
But it definitely had an impact on your career.
Oh, yeah.
And certainly got you, I guess it helped you advance to other beats, or how did it work for you? Did you...
Well, I came back from Dallas still a member of the staff at WNEW, but I had caught the attention of a lot of people, particularly in New York, because where all the big news organizations were, they were all buzzing about my report.